So the 6 o'clock hour has arrived. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday evening Parent Academy webinar session. Thank you for joining us. And again, we are excited to have you as audience listeners and participants. I am Tina Folston Hayes, the Parent Academy Specialist for Education, Equity, and Outreach for Alachua County Public Schools. And I welcome you this evening. Tonight, we will receive some helpful information from our guest speaker, Ms. Patrice Crumbs. Did I say
Yes,
that right?
yes, you said it
All
right. Good
right.
evening.
Awesome. And she will share some helpful information for us in regards to what it takes to graduate, the assessments and things like that. So just before we begin, let me review a few housekeeping elements. Please keep your microphones on mute through the duration of the presentation. We will be monitoring your questions and we will answer them accordingly. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the webinar window. And please note that the Parent Academy webinars are closed captioned and recorded and posted to our website for access for later review or anyone that could not join us live tonight. Your questions will be answered at the conclusion of each session. If there is any specific needs that you have or personal conversations, the Parent Academy's email address is parentacademy@gm.sbac.edu, and we'll get to those questions and your requests for additional information forwarded to the correct Alachua County Public School personnel or team member. So now, without further ado, I turn it over to Ms. Patrice. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Mrs. Folston Hayes. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy Thursday. I like to also call this Happy Friday Junior. So I hope your week is going swell. As Mrs. Folston Hayes mentioned, we're going to dive into some important gems in regards to a successful path to graduation and really and beyond. So I'm going to hit on some pieces that will even take your students, your scholars, through the graduation process of high school and into their post-secondary goals as well. So I hope you enjoy. Grab your pads and pens and take some notes. And as she mentioned, we will take questions at the end. So I want to start off with giving you a little bit of my background. As mentioned, my name is Patrice Crumbs. I was born in Gainesville, raised in Duval, Jacksonville, Florida. I am the CEO and owner of PC Virtual Tutoring, where I also serve as college and career coach. So I graduated from Stanton College Prep in Jacksonville, then went on to Florida A&M, received my bachelor's in marketing from the University of Central Florida, and my master's in educational leadership from the University of Phoenix. I'm a mompreneur. I also have a high school student, so a lot of the things we talk about, I live out in my business, but with my own child as well. I'm a certified global career coach and facilitator. A fun fact about myself, I got to perform in the Super Bowl on the field with Paul McCartney, Super Bowl 39 in Jacksonville, so that was super cool. And my 10-word story, I am determined to positively impact the world through education. So again, sit back, grab your waters, grab your snacks, grab your notepads, and I hope that you catch some gems tonight that's going to be helpful for you and your scholars. All right, so our session agenda, we'll talk about courses needed to graduate, GPA, assessment requirements and how to prepare, community service, how to fund college and career endeavors, your lifeline for success, which is the school counselor. So we'll talk about how to start and build that relationship. And then we'll have Q&A at the very end. Okay, so reasons to graduate. And I know if I ask this question aloud or to your students, if they're sitting next to you, we would get a variety of answers. So what's up on the screen is not all inclusive, but these are some big tenets in regards to the importance of receiving a high school graduation diploma. So pride is one of them. Okay, it's super huge. I'm already counting down 2 more years and screaming and crying as my daughter go across the stage, but also for the students to have that pride and that they accomplish. This is a big thing. These 13 kindergarten years of school through 12th grade is huge. So they should definitely take pride. And I want them to go ahead, if they're listening, if you're listening in, parents, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back for how far you've come already. Career opportunities. There's going to be a multitude of opportunities that open up with that high school diploma, and of course, and beyond. Educational opportunities that's going to require that high school diploma, whether it's going into the college, going into the military, or working on certifications or different apprenticeship programs, and also income. So high school graduates earn much more than students who drop out of high school. So again, this is not an all-conclusive or inclusive list, but some very major tenets as to why it's important to graduate from high school. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the courses needed. Okay, and I know as you're looking with your students, some of you may even have middle schoolers getting ready to go in high school, or a lot of you have high schoolers already, and you're looking at those course descriptions and you're like, OMG, like, where do we start? And what do they need? And how do we know what they need? So don't try to memorize this list. You can find it over on fldoe.org. I put the link here. It's not clickable, but if you just go to FLDOE and click on course requirements for high school graduation in the state of Florida, this list will populate. So this first slide talks about the ELA, the English Language Arts, and the math requirements. Okay, so as you see, there's different ways that they can earn those 4 ELA credits through the English 1, 2, 3, 4 courses. So 9th through 12th, they'll have an English class every year. And or if they decide to go into dual enrollment. So some of those classes, again, this is going to be big to meet with their counselor to talk about requirements to go into dual enrollment. We'll talk about a little of that later. But also those are options, or to take the honors version, advanced placement, where they will receive more points in regards to their GPA. So you sometimes hear people say, my child has a 4.6, and you're like, how does that happen when it's a 4.0 scale? So taking the honors, AP, ACE, IB courses, dual enrollment, allow for them to get some extra points from taking those accelerated courses. Same thing with mathematics. So there's 4 credits required. And again, this looks very different from student to student, because as you see, one of the requirements is that students take Algebra 1. And you may be thinking, well, my 7th or 8th grader, depending on if they're in an accelerated program in middle school, they may already be taking Algebra 1. So yes, that goes towards their high school math credits, and they're starting their high school GPA. So we're super excited to do those accelerated programs. I'm constantly reminding my students, my parents, that we really want to take advantage of the opportunity to get ahead, but we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and doing well in those courses. Also, geometry will be one of those math requirements. And then there's, again, some industry certifications and some computer science courses. So it's super huge to sit down with your child's school counselor and or your child as they're making those schedules each year. And I like to have my checklist. So I go right on FLDOE, print off this sheet, and every year, normally in the springtime, or when your 9th grader is transferring over the summer as they're making their schedule, each year we're checking off that they have each of these courses. So we'll make sure that the audit and everything that they need towards graduation, that they stay on track. And we call these the core classes, okay? And in my title, I said, course schedule requirements make meaningful selections. So again, depending on your child post-secondary goals, will drive the schedules that they do now. So it's almost like, or not almost, it's planning with the end in mind. So if you know your child wants to go into a certain college program or a certain industry program where they're going to need certain courses, or they just want exposure to see if this is something I really want to do, then really sitting down and strategically planning those meaningful selections are helpful. Again, don't get bogged down in it. Don't get stressed out with it. When I say meaningful, again, it's what's meaningful for your child and their goals. And it's okay if it changes. But to really sit down and plan as much as possible will be super helpful in the long run. Okay, so let's matriculate over to the other core classes, which will be your child's science. They'll need 3 credits of science. Again, as you see listed here, I have the courses listed. Feel free to take a picture of it, but you can find this right over at FLDOE. So it talks about the biology courses and the equivalencies. Again, the meaningful part is if your child is planning to work on requirements to get Florida Bright Future Scholarship, then it's certain courses when they're getting those options that they want to make sure they pay close attention to so that they qualify for certain programs and scholarships. Social studies, they're going to need 3 credits. World history, US government, and econ, those are 2 half credit classes. So together to make 1, and it gets between those 4 classes, the 3 credits for social studies. Then there's a requirement of a performing arts. And again, depending on the school that your child attends, there are a vast variety of options. So they may be into drama or dance or drawing, but sit down with that counselor to ensure that the class that's being selected falls up under that performing art realm. Again, it's a lot of choices, and I love to see students go into courses that they love, or that they may grow to love, or that they just want to explore, also while meeting these requirements, because we never know what they may tap into in regards to their gifts and their passions as they're thinking about their post-secondary plans. Also, they'll need 1 credit in PE. And it's a multitude of ways, again, to earn those credits, and even online, depending on their preference. And for some schools, they can get a waiver if they play 2 years of JV or varsity sports. So again, a waiver would have to be obtained from your child's school counselor. It would have to be signed by yourself, the student, and the coach, and submitted in a timely fashion so that the counselor has enough time to put it on the transcript. So every year, annually, don't wait till 12th grade, annually, we want to be doing a graduation audit, okay? And normally, most schools, they call it a graduation audit or a credit check. So parents don't, your students, they may be making those schedules, but have them to screenshot it if they're doing it inside of Canvas or Skyward or different platforms, or if they're doing it paper, pen, or pencil, look at it. You have access, like I said, to this sheet where you can go back and be a double eye to make sure that everything is aligned so that your student is on track to graduate on time and to set themselves up for a nice space in regards to their after high school plans. There's a total of 8 elective credits that are required, as well as 1 online course. And again, it's a lot of courses that go driver's ed, have some personal, family, consumer sciences classes. So whatever may be fitting for your student to do that online credit, again, I would meet with that counselor, because there's a variety of ways that students can do that online course. Sometimes in conjunction during the school year with their other courses. They may want to do it over the summer, but I say the earlier the better. So again, you can check this off your list and know that your child is on track. Students must earn a 2.0 GPA on a 4.0 scale in order to graduate. That's a statewide requirement. So again, something that we really want to keep our eye on is that GPA, because from grade level to grade level, that's not always the requirement. Now they can't fail a course in the next grade level. They're going to have to retake that course over the summer, but the GPA, they may be moving, matriculating to the next grade level, and the GPA may, drop below that 2.0. So we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on it, okay? Because there are different things that you can do to work on grade recovery, meeting with the teacher, as being proactive as possible. But even if the proactive way is okay, again, the child may need some additional remediation or enrichment in order to get those scores and grades that they need, that there's options. So don't feel hopeless if in one class they may have some struggles, or vice versa. If they're doing well and you want them to accelerate and maybe next year take the honors course of that birth, just make sure that you speak up and advocate and teach your children to advocate for themselves, again, in a timely manner. Making an appointment typically is the way. Some schools do it online, some do walk-in. So just knowing the protocol of the school in regards to meeting with the school counselor. And then we'll talk more too. It also mentions here, some students, depending on if they have an IEP, may be eligible for a waiver for the state assessment graduation requirements, of which we'll talk about in a few slides. But again, get things in writing, keep documentation of these particular tenets. And also too, again, beginning with the end in mind is the big piece of helping to properly plan those high school schedules, okay? So we want to make sure that we're looking at those schedules with our students, that we're reviewing these requirements from year to year so that come junior, senior year, it's not like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Everybody's getting frazzled and stressed out. But so instead of it being a constant sprint, we want to make it a marathon where they can pace themselves, enjoy the experience, but also making sure to meet the requirements to set them up in a nice space for their future. Okay. So as I mentioned, I also like to give examples when I'm giving certain pieces of information that will be helpful. So as you're going through your child's schedule, and again, most of them, I know my daughter at her high school, they this month, they're actually doing their schedules for the next grade level. So already we're looking at, okay, what courses you want to take? What are you thinking about studying in college? Do you want to do honors courses this year? And then again, lining that up with the state requirements, lining up their goals, and then checking off what they have and what they need. So when you get those schedules, make sure all 4 academic classes are there. As I mentioned, the English, the language arts, the science, the social studies, that there's no duplicate classes. Okay, a lot of times these schedules are generated. Of course, it's a human input in it, but the generation through the computer, sometimes there's errors, and we're humans, so humans can make errors as well. So no one will get offended. They'll actually be like, oh, thank you for being a part of the process. So making sure there's no duplicate English classes or missing classes when you're looking at that checklist by grade level. No classes that they've already taken and passed, okay? Because sometimes students may transfer in, or your student may be getting ahead and taking online classes simultaneously with their brick and mortar classes, and it may not have yet been put on the transcript. So you want to make sure that if they're doing it through FLVS or through a virtual academy, that those classes, one, they have to be approved by their counselor to take those courses, but that then they're transferred onto their transcript so that the student is getting credit and not having duplicates on their transcripts. And then also making sure that no classes for which you are not eligible for. So for example, you want to make sure that if you have a freshman, that it's not an English 4 that was put on their schedule, because English 4 is for 12th graders. Okay, so we want to make sure that all of those alignments are there. So feel free, again, take a picture. As Mrs. Folston Hayes mentioned, this will be recorded so you can go back and look at it as you're going through the process to make sure that your child's schedule is aligned. Okay, so there are different high school diploma options. Okay, so as you notice that I mentioned, what's the best route for your child? Okay, so a lot of times we may be talking to our family or friends, but we want to make sure that whatever we choose is what's best for our child. And so there are different noted diploma options here, such as the 24 credit and the 18 credit are probably the ones that are most, I won't say popular because it's not a ranking system, but those that most students may be under one of those realms. And we can talk about those differences in just a few. There's also career and technical education pathways. So with the magnet programs, that may be a route that best suits your students' interests and or passions or goals for, like I said, post-secondary. They may want to go into the IB program or the ACE curriculum. So there are different diploma options. And I would definitely say, especially for programs like ACE and IB, that you start to explore those programs when your child is in middle school. So because there's a lot of requirements sometimes that they may need the Algebra 1 to go into it. So you want to make sure those courses are on their schedules in middle school so that if they're meeting the GPA, that they have the courses, everything is aligned in order to be eligible for those particular options. And just in case you've never heard of an 18 credit option versus the 24 credit, I wanted to notate here what's the difference. Okay, so 3 electives instead of 8, as was mentioned on the prior slide. Physical education is not required. The online course is not required. Okay, but again, a lot of times we're taking away the electives. I've seen it in my time as a high school graduation coach that it may take away their foreign languages, which may be required by colleges. So you just want to make sure that whatever option is most suited for your child also align with their goals. So always ask questions when in doubt. And again, I know as our students start to get older, we want to pass that torch for them to start to advocate for themselves, and I'm all for that. And so, but still, I stand not too far behind, so I can make sure that everything is still, in alignment for the goals, and making sure that if there are questions, everyone understands what implications, whether awesome or not so awesome, that the decisions that our students and ourselves that we're making are assisting them to make. Okay, so, and I know this is a lot of information, so take a deep breath. You don't have to memorize it. As mentioned, everything that's here is pulled right from FLDOE, so the Florida Department of Education, because these are not county requirements, these are state requirements. So every student in the state of Florida falls up under these requirements for graduation from high school. Okay, so students must pass the following statewide assessments. And it's the requirement. So when you go and you pull this form, when you go on FLDOE, because I know some of you are looking it up now, or you're going to go on after this session, it is based on the student's initial 9th grade year, because you're going to see multiple scale scores for the different assessments. And it's going to say, if your student entered in these years in 9th grade, so those are going to tell you what scores your child must have. Okay, so these are the most current, I want to say, from anyone that entered in the 2013, 2014 9th grade. Again, it's listed on that sheet based on your child initial year in 9th grade, but these are the most recent, most current for students that are currently in high school. And you may say, why do they keep it that way? Some students, even with after graduation, if they haven't met the assessment requirements, they still have opportunities to keep testing. So they are issued what's called a certificate of completion. And then once they reach the scores that are required, then they will be issued their diploma. So you'll even see scores from FCAT, and FCAT has been a while ago. So you'll see FCAT scores, FSA scores, and now the new FAST testing under the new best standards. Is what the majority of probably everyone that's on here, students will fall up under. So in grade 10, just like 3rd grade was a big year for our students, grade 10 ELA, in this case, FAST testing for our current 10th graders and under, and then FSA 11th and 12th graders can still do retakes for FAST. But the 10th grade year is the year that it starts to count towards graduation assessment requirements. And the scale score, the magic number that you want to look for is 350 or higher. Okay, so whether they fall up under the FSA for current 11th and 12th graders, or FAST testing for 10th graders, or for prior students that fall up under FSA, the scale score, the magic number, when you go back to look at those test reports, and all of them, when you go onto Skyward, if you click on the testing history, you'll be able to see every single test that your child has taken since they've been in school. So even if they transfer from other counties, if those transcripts were transferred, you'll be able to monitor what they're making each year on these assessments. Some parents may ask, is this the only way that my child can meet the graduation assessment requirements? And the answer is no. So we have in the state of Florida what are called concordance tests. So these tests have been deemed comparable to our state standardized testing, where students, based on the scores noted here, can also check off the graduation assessment requirement. So the concordant tests for ELA are SAT, where students can sign up for Saturday testing, or most times when they get in 11th, 12th grade, the school have even school-wide testing days that they can test to meet these requirements. And the required score is a 480 on the evidence-based reading and writing sections. Okay, or because they can sit for both. Okay, as many times as they need to, the ACT 18 on the English or reading sections. Okay, and so through the matriculation after 10th grade, there will be opportunities to retake the FSA and or FAST assessment during the school year, but you can also register your student for SAT or ACT. And you might be thinking, well, Patrice, aren't those college admissions tests? Yes. So by taking those tests, they could be hitting 2 goals: their graduation requirement and or their college admissions and scholarship requirements. Okay. And so too, I don't want to get all in your head. We'll have Q&A at the end, but I just know for myself, when thinking about this process for the students that I work with in my company, and also my own child, and talking to friends and people in the grocery store, it's like, well, when should they start testing? Okay, because research shows students should start taking the SAT, ACT their spring year, the spring of their junior year. Okay, and that's totally fine. Again, preparation is what's going to be most important because these tests do cost, and we'll talk about some other alternatives and waivers for fees. But you want to make sure that your child is prepared. Okay, but they can start testing in 10th grade if you want to go ahead and get a head start before they even sit for their FAST test or their FSA, and know that, hey, well, they've already made the requirements by the concordance. And sometimes you may have to do that, especially if students are wanting to apply for dual enrollment. So like right now for Santa Fe, the window opened on yesterday, on February 1st. Okay, so our students, they can get through not through FSA, through ACT, SAT, or PERT testing, the requirements for dual enrollment. So it would be advantageous to start the testing as early, depending on your child goals. And then the second requirement, so the first requirement is the grade 10 English language arts, which is through either FSA or FAST. And then we have our concordance test. And then the second requirement is the math graduation assessment requirement. And the initial assessment is that Algebra 1 end of course exam. You may see it noted as EOC. So that's the end of course exam via FSA, or now under the new BEST standards. And so the scale score, that magic number, as you may be logging into your Skyward app, or you may be looking on your child report if it came home in a tangible manner, the scale score that you're looking for is a 497 or higher. Okay. Also for the Algebra 1 EOC, you have concordance assessments. So as mentioned, these have been deemed by the state as comparable assessments to say that your students have mastered these standards and that they are good to go on the graduation assessment requirements. So there's a few additional options with the Algebra 1 EOC requirement. So students can sit for the SAT, math, score of 420 or higher, the PSAT, which is administered during school, and most times it's the students 9th or 10th grade. Some schools do it even in 8th grade. So definitely check with your school's counselors to see when they're going to administer those assessments, so that students know and have a timeline of preparation, because preparation is going to be key. Their classes, and we'll talk about, it's going to be a whole slide about preparation, so I won't jump the gun, I just get super excited. Then they can also sit for the ACT with a score of 16, or the FSA or BEST Geometry EOC with the score of 499 or higher. Okay, so they can have several ways to meet these requirements. The biggest thing is to start tracking it, knowing where your students are, asking, requesting for those detailed score reports. Why is that important? Because it's going to tell you the reporting categories that were tested, what your child scored on each of those sections, so that as they're preparing, as you may put them in tutoring, as they practice independently, you have a very strategic and targeted goals of what they need to prioritize to meet these requirements and or exceed these requirements. Again, as we know, ACT, SAT are also college admissions assessments, so we can hit a lot of different goals with those assessments. Okay, so these assessments are important, not just for graduation, but these are some additional. Algebra 1 is one that we saw, that's the math requirement. Geometry is a concordance for that. But the US history and biology, all 4 of these are important because it counts 30% of your child's final grade in the course. Okay, and so sometimes they may go all four quarters thinking, oh, I have an A average or a B average. 30% is pretty lofty. So we want to make sure that we understand the implications of the importance of these cumulative assessments, not to scare you, not to scare your kids, but to make sure that they're prepared. Okay, and the way we stay prepared is to know, again, planning with the end in mind, knowing what's expected of us. It's like, hey, my kid made all B's, why did they end up with a C in this class? Okay, go back and look at the test score that they got on the EOC, which sometimes takes more time than in the last day of school to get those scores back. So you just want to pay attention to those transcripts, because if I was able to fully interact in this very moment, remember what that GPA requirement is for graduation, at minimum 2.0. So we want to make sure that we seal the deal when it comes to how certain assessments play a part in our child's transcript and their final grades in these courses. Okay, so assessment waivers and accommodations for students with disabilities. So there are waivers for students with disabilities. They are expected to participate in the assessment. So to sit down and take it, unless you opt out, that's a whole nother process. But under state law, certain students that fall up under this RAM may be provided a waiver. So that means they're exempt. Parents, you sign off on it too. Talk about it during MRT meetings for students with disabilities whose abilities cannot be accurately measured by this assessment. So again, the waivers are issued on a case-by-case basis based on your child if they have an IEP. Okay, but outside of that, accommodations, things like extended time based on your child's IEP or 504 plan can be implemented during SAT and ACT, in addition to the statewide assessments during the school day. So some parents are not aware of that. So I wanted to be sure to bring that to your attention. So when you register your child they register themselves for SAT, ACT, they can also still carry those extended time accommodations into their SAT and ACT. Now, there a protocol to doing that. It doesn't automatically just apply. They don't have a list of what students that have registered receive accommodations at their school. So I've notated the steps here, but you can also go on to the respective websites of these registering agents, because to take the SAT or ACT, your child has to make an account and they have to register for the test date that they want to sit for. So again, it's nothing that's automatically just because they're enrolled in a school in the state of Florida. They have to go in and make an account, register for it, and for the accommodations to be applied on SAT, there's a consent that you'll sign off and give to the school SSD. That's the school facilitator for students with disabilities coordinator. They will complete the process, and it must be done 7 weeks at minimum, 7 weeks prior to the test day that you want your child to sign up for, because it's going to be a code, if they're approved, that you're going to have to enter during registration. Okay, so you want to be very proactive. You can go right onto SAT, ACT, type in the year of your child, whatever grade they're in, and when they're going to start testing. And I literally print it off and I put it up on my refrigerator. So that way we can highlight, okay, these are your goal test dates. You want to make sure to sign up by the deadline, because there's additional fees. These tests are already $60+ alone, so I don't want you to have to pay any extra fees. You want to register by the deadline, unless it's something emergency that come up and you need to get your student in there for whatever reason. ACT, a little bit different in the process of getting those time accommodations added. On the very first screen, is going to ask, are you eligible for accommodations? You want to make sure your student during registration checks that box. Then same thing, you're going to complete a consent form that's on their website, and you're going to forward this information or email to your school official, the SSD, or the school coordinator for students with disabilities. They must, not from you, it must come from them, the documents to the ACT testing body prior to the deadline that your child is registering for. Okay, so there's same thing. I would just say anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for both of these assessments. You want to get these accommodation requests in. And it takes about 5 to 10 business days for ACT to render a decision, and it's going to be on your child's admissions ticket, that they have been approved for these accommodations. They're not going to be singled out or called out. It doesn't stop them from being eligible to go into college or for scholarships, but this is making sure they rightfully get the accommodations that they rightfully deserve. And then when it comes to small group testing, that's going to be based on, again, your child's IEP 504 plan for state testing during the school day. Okay, with that, some parents may ask, well, what if my child is not an IB or ACE program or a CTE program? There are still options or opportunities to get diploma designations for your students where they can stand out in the college application and scholarship process. Again, all of this information, I split it up into different tenets, but it's literally a one-pager when you Google on the fldoe.org website for high school graduation requirements. So you have your scholar diploma designation or the merit diploma designation based upon your child meeting each of these particular tenets. Okay, so this Again, it's very exciting. I know it's a lot of information, but soak it in as much as you can. Go onto the website, print it out, and just sit down and take it day by day. Okay, spreading out the process makes it enjoyable, makes it exciting. High school is a great time, but we want to make sure to be as strategic and plan as proactive as we can to make sure that our students, that our children are able to benefit from a lot of these great opportunities that have evolved over time. And they'll literally get a gold sticker on their diploma that's going to have these designations based upon meeting these requirements. Okay, so more about SAT, ACT. Again, there will be school-wide testing days. Typically, when students get in the 11th grade, PSAT may be as early as the 8th grade, depending on your school institution, and there they have the autonomy to decide when they start to administer it. PSAT and SAT are different. Okay, so PSAT is a nice indicator of how students would perform on the SAT in 11th grade. They use the scores to see if they're eligible for merit scholarship. So again, it's important when they sit down to do their very best so that those opportunities may arise. And then again, you have those Saturday test administrations for ACT and SAT, and also inquire with your child's school counselor if they're eligible for test fee waivers. That means with the waiver, they can sit for the assessments for up to 2 times each for free. But a lot of times it is based upon income, but don't just count yourself out. Sometimes it's just, we don't get what we have not because we ask not. So make a note to send an email or have your child during whatever respective time they can meet with their counselor to inquire about being eligible for test fee waivers. And it's a lifesaver. On ACT, if you were to purchase the online practice computer-based modules, it's about $800. With the waiver, it's free. So they sit for the test for free. They get these perks of prep for free. They get to send their testing scores and all those pieces. All students do, even without the waiver, but they get some additional perks with those test fee waivers. And on SAT, it can even be used at participating college, university institutions to waive their application fee. Okay, so all of these things can get very pricey, but there are resources to help offset some of those prices. So I put the websites here for you. Again, don't try to do this all in one night. Break it down. Say, okay, today we're going to work on this particular tenant, or by grade level. Okay, 9th grade, we should be doing this. In 10th grade, we're going to be working on these pieces. So tonight is to get these gems and then rightfully place them into their categories to set yourself up on a nice timeline. And scores can be used for a variety of purposes. Again, for dual enrollment, requirements to meet high school graduation assessment requirements, admissions into college, and college scholarships. So my motto is start now, start early, but preparation is definitely key. Okay, and these are a few resources that you can jot down or take a picture of in regards to how to prep for the assessment. So of course, just for students taking the classes, the material that they're learning in school, math is math. Okay, English is English. A lot of times on standardized testing, it's the way the questions are being asked. Okay, so that's why preparation is important. Learn how to compute the problems, learn the strategies for annotating the text, and read those novels that the teachers are asking your students to read, because it's expanding and giving them exposure to the type of vocabulary that they're going to see on these standardized assessments. But in addition to that, test prep courses are helpful. Private tutors, you have sites like Khan Academy. And definitely utilize your school district or school counseling websites. There's a lot of additional information for online as well as face-to-face resources. They have different tenets, just like under the Parent Academy, resources for parents, resources for students, and there's a lot of different textbooks and different assessment. So don't leave those things void. Okay, the district is paying for them. Utilize those subscriptions so that your child has the maximized time and opportunity to be able to maximize their goals. Okay, get involved. That's a big part. Again, I know I said this was about high school, but I like to talk about beyond, because sometimes when we talk about beyond, then that gets our children in the mindset of doing what they need to do now to get to these places. Okay, so it's important for them to get involved in extracurricular activities, community involvement, clubs, athletic, community service projects. And I just notated here some different ways to inquire about, well, one, why is it important? There's a lot of times, why do I need to do that, mom? Why do I need to do that, dad? Why do I need to do that, grandma, granddad, aunt, uncle? Okay, these are the whys. Okay, and then these are the how. So a lot of schools hold school club fair events. The website is key. I keep saying the go onto the website. If you haven't been on your child's school or the district's website, after today, I want that to be a part of a place that you just check in for the various noted reasons. Have them ask their peers, their counselor, teachers, okay, their counselor. We're going to talk about that. Counselor is the lifeline. And make sure with their community service, some schools, not the state of Florida, it's not a requirement for the state of Florida. Some schools, because just in case I have any parents from PK or different schools on here, submitting those logs are a part of their graduation requirements. But also to get credit for scholarships like Florida Bright Futures, you have to have the log submitted to your child's counselor, and it has to be put on their transcript to get credit. Okay, and over the summer, legislation was put into place that not only through community service like nonprofits helping with schools, but also if your child worked at a paid job, that they can also receive credit. There's a job log that they'll have their employers, different tenets to that they have to fill out, but that they can use the job credit to meet the community service requirement for Florida Bright Futures. Okay, so I know some students are working because they want to, they have to, whatever the reason may be, they now can get credit as a part of their community service for the Florida Bright Future scholarship requirement. And that varies. It's 75%, it's 75 hours for the 75% and 100 hours for the 100%. And then some schools for graduation give out different color cords that they wear based upon their school's requirements. So inquire, and make sure to submit the proper documentation timely, because your counselor is inputting for every student that's submitted. So the earlier, the better. Okay. Funding. Some parents, college is expensive. Yes, and it keeps going up along with eggs and everything else we have to purchase. So there's local scholarships, there's national scholarships. Beware of scams. If they're asking you to pay for something in order to get a scholarship, delete, block. Okay. Raise.me is a great site. It's micro scholarships. It's an app your child can download, or they can do it on the computer, and you're basically competing against yourself. So they earn scholarships for things like making A's, making B's, going to college fairs, playing sports, doing community service. Literally, for the participating schools, when they input their information, they're going to earn $5 for every A, $10. Every school is different. Private schools offer a little bit more. Raise.me is awesome. And it will automatically, whatever school your child decides to go to, it will populate on their financial aid award letter. Okay. College Board, that's the site to register your students for SAT, but also for AP exams and for scholarships. They have $40,000 scholarships that they award every single month, starting the end of their junior year through their senior year. FAFSA, okay, is another way if you need to apply for loans, or sometimes for scholarships, they require that you have a FAFSA completed. As well as for Florida Bright Futures, there's an application called the FFAA. So the Florida financial aid application is separate, and both of those open up October 1st of your child's senior year. Visit college, go to college fairs. Sometimes right on the spot, they'll say, hey, show me your transcript. We're going to offer you a scholarship. Okay. Or as they apply, they also not only look at them for admissions, but a lot of the institutions now have internal merit-based scholarships that they're going to, based on their transcripts and their applications, they may qualify. Okay. Don't be in the may category. I want you to look at the institutions and see what the requirements are. And so that your child, they're pacing themselves each year to work towards those scholarships. Because again, our goal is for them to go to college on scholarship. Okay, again, the school counseling website has a lot of resources, follow social scholarship groups on social media. Again, be very aware that they are legit. Okay, this talks more about community service for Bright Futures. I did mention that early, so I won't stay on here a long while, but again, it's an opportunity for them to get it for the Florida Bright Futures scholarship, whether it's through community service or is through paid work hours. Okay, so that legislation was just passed this past summer in order for the paid work hours to also count towards the community service requirement for Bright Futures. Okay, these are additional post-secondary options, military, apprenticeship, industry certifications, just as super important and awesome. So start looking at what do they need to take. ASVAB testing for military. What are the requirements? What courses could help them be a better applicant or candidate as they're applying? How to stand out in the application process. Okay, there's so many options for our children, but we have to front load the research and make sure that we're sitting down and having open conversation and dialogue with them, and making sure to plan proactively is what's super important. Okay, experience changes things. My director, when I was a college and career coach at the University of Florida, assistant director, the director would always say, experience changes things, and it does. So your student may, Mom, Dad, I don't know if I want to do a magnet program. I don't know if I want to do the CNA certification or be an ACE. Experience and exposure is what kind of helped to open up their lens to say, hey, I want to try this out. So part-time jobs, internships, shadowing, doing gig work, and volunteering are a lot of times what spark passions or bring out different things in us and our children in order to know what they would like to go into. Okay, and that lifeline to success, have your student as well as yourself. Some counselors change every school year by last name. Some of them start with them in 9th grade and go all the way through 12th grade. But every year it's important to have a sit down time, whether it's once every quarter or at least twice a year, but have your child to make an appointment and to build a strong relationship with their school counselor. A school counselor should know their name. So when scholarships come across their desk or different programs come across their desk, they're going to be, your child face and name is right in the forefront because they built that relationship. Okay, because they're the ones that do the course scheduling. They're the ones that can talk to about having chats about how do I protect my GPA? What are things that I can do just in case I hit some bumps in the road? Or how can I pad my GPA by taking certain accelerated courses? Every year they should be doing a credit check and graduation audit. Parents, you can request a meeting with them as well to sit down and be a part of that conversation. They are pivotal in college and career planning, as well as to provide yourself and your children with social, emotional support and strategies. Okay, so utilize those who counselors. I know they're bogged down. They're probably like, Patrice, she's going to send a whole mass load my way, but make sure to make an appointment. It doesn't have to be every day unless it's for whatever reason your child needs to see them, but at least several times per year, they should see your child as well as yourself, even if it's by email, to introduce yourself and to talk about the goals and the opportunities that are out there. Okay, so these are the keys to success. Set clear goals. Strong work ethic is important. Yes, we all have off days and that's okay. It's all about how we rebound and regroup. Consistency, discipline, willing to sacrifice, put in the work now, it's going to pay off. Continuous pursuit of knowledge, keep learning, keep exploring, take courses, even if you're like, oh my goodness, that sounds hard, that sounds weird, that sounds whatever, pursue it. Okay, the ability to listen, that way they can learn and be able to be receptive to what's out there. I will never quit attitude, clear purpose in life, and it may change. It's okay. Let's keep reminding our children it's okay to have a plan. Life is not linear. Okay, it's like a lot of squiggly lines and things change, and that's okay. But let's start with a plan so that we have a baseline and never be afraid to take risk. Okay, and parents, it takes a village. Okay, so don't feel like, I know I said a lot tonight. Don't feel like you're in this alone. You have the teachers, you have the school counselors, you have the administrations, you have companies like PC Virtual Tutoring, breathe, sleep, eat, sweat, working with families and children, because it takes a village. And I love this one saying, I keep hearing it takes a village to raise a child. Do they just show up, or is there a number to call? Okay, so I know you're like, where is my village when I need them? Okay, but reach out. Don't be afraid to ask. That's not a sign of weakness. We have to work together to be able to make sure that our children are getting the resources and everything that they need to be successful. Okay, so that is my time. Those are the gems that I have for you. And now we'll open up the floor for Q&A. Hey, Mrs. Poston Hayes, do we have any
Thank you
questions in
so
there?
very much. That was a lot of information.
Yes,
If you would share your presentation with me,
definitely.
so that way, if any parents would like to look at that while they're talking with the counselors, or meeting with advisors to say, hey, this is what I learned. Can you help me navigate? If you would do that for me, that would be wonderful.
Most
And I
certainly.
could get it over to anyone that requests. And then let's see. Looking at the Q&A now and see if we have any. No questions as of yet.
Okay. And that's okay. I know they'll probably email or call your line or the respective people if
Yes.
anything pops up. So I'll
And they may
definitely,
even be typing.
okay.
How many hours needed for volunteers?
So that's for the volunteer hours, again, not a state of Florida graduation requirement, but for Florida Bright, again, depending on your child's school. So I don't know, I know it's particularly for Alachua County public school students, but I may have some students, I know PK, it is a graduation requirement, but for Bright Futures, 75 hours for the 75% scholarship, 100 hours for the 100%. So it's a lot of different qualifications with GPA, certain courses, certain test scores. So that will kind of align and set the trajectory for what your child needs to earn. But I say set the bar high. Go for the maximum. That way, whatever category they fall up under based on GPA, test scores, courses, that boom, they know they have that out of the way and the requirement is met.
Thank you for that.
Yes, you're welcome.
My apologies. What is the minimum for graduation?
I'm not sure if they're asking for GPA. The minimum GPA is 2.0, but as far as graduation requirements, there's not a minimum or a max. It's not a requirement for volunteer hours unless your child attends a school that require. But in the state of Florida, that's not a part of the high school graduation requirements for state public schools. So again, that's more or less for Bright Futures, but also allows your child to stand out in the college application process, as well as I see a ton of, I do a lot of scholarship coaching, and every single application is not necessarily requiring, but it's asking about volunteer community service. And I see that a lot of times students that have those well-rounded applications are the ones who are being chosen as recipients.
Okay. Okay, so we have, let me clear some of these out so we can get to the ones below. Okay, so who in Alachua County school system is best qualified to identify the strengths in students? I'm not sure what, so as to help determine a direction as getting such information from some students and then is nearly impossible. I know that the ASVAB could be helpful. And I'm not even sure what that acronym
So
stands for.
yeah, so the ASVAB, that's the assessment for going into the military.
Okay.
So that would, and definitely you can go by a recruitment office to grab a test booklet. A lot of school counselors keep them right on hand at the schools, but if not, you can also go talk to a recruiter at a local military office. And to answer the first question, and I'm going to put a preface in there, if they're talking about most qualified to talk about college and career planning and direction, again, I say that lifeline is the school counselor, but it doesn't mean that the teacher can't be helpful. I've seen a lot of students that, they may, really take and build a relationship with a teacher, maybe their math teacher, because maybe they want to go into engineering or becoming a math teacher. So the teachers are just as valuable in that process, but the school counselor can talk about the courses and different options for colleges and let them know when different career path officers come onto campus for them to sign up for those different informational sessions and things of that sort. So really everybody on the campus is super helpful, but that school counselor is going to really be that lifeline to be a part of that process to map out those plans.
And then my question, I think for Scooby is
Mhm.
where does your child go to school at? Are they already in high school? Because I know that Santa Fe has a person there to talk to them about college and
Mhm.
what to do and how to get those scholarships that Santa Fe has. So depending on what school your child goes to, there's probably a representative there to help with those, help navigate down that path as well.
Definitely. And bringing that up too, because that's definitely right on point. Mrs. Folston Hayes. Also, a lot of schools have the Santa Fe Achieve counselors on campus on certain days. So that will be a nice person to sign up with. I know for my own daughter that's in high school, her English teacher is always a wealth of knowledge. Like she sent out the reminders about dual enrollment applications are open, and she's open to reading their essays and personal statements for college. So again, normally that starting counterpart is somebody in that counseling space on campus, but sometimes some schools even have military recruiters also that come out. Again, I was a high school graduation coach for several years in Jacksonville, Florida. So not every school has that particular role by name, but in that office space, there's someone there that can help provide that guidance, along with, again, building relationships with teachers, because they're going to be also when students need letters of recommendation as well.
So Santa Fe High School, I just seen that you answered.
Okay.
And you're very welcome. And if it's someone that I can reach out to get that information to you, or you want to reach out to me after the webinar, then I can definitely try to connect you with someone at Santa Fe, so that way they can help you navigate.
Awesome.
Okay. You were saying that the student needed a score of 497. What were you
Yes.
referring to?
That was in regards to the Algebra 1 EOC score. And they're also, again, concordant tests for that by taking the PSAT, SAT, Geometry EOC, ACT. But that 497 was in reference to the scale score for the Algebra 1 EOC to meet that math assessment requirement. And again, I'll send this again to Mrs. Folston Hayes to share, and also on FL, L as in Lamb, D as in David, OE.org are all the, they have one pagers of assessment requirements as well as credit requirements for your student. And again, remember those score requirements for assessments are based on the year that your child entered ninth grade.
Okay, and then our online courses for high school throughout the school year, or just the first semester?
It depends on the course. It's going to depend on if it's a half credit. Because they need one whole credit, it may require that they take two courses. So that may take the whole school year. It may be a one course that they're doing. And some of these courses are self-paced. So they may be able to finish it early, but it's still the one credit that they have to earn. So that's a great question. So you want to make sure to look at how much the credit the course is worth to know if they're going to need to take another segment of another course to get another half credit. But again, most times these are at least a year course, depending on if it's going to be one course or splitting up into two.
Okay. And then what age is it appropriate for a child to start volunteering?
It's going to depend on the entity. So some organizations have age requirements. A lot of them, I know with the medical, most of them are 16 and up. And it's just going to depend on where they're volunteering, but the credits will start to accumulate and they'll be able to submit them to their counselor to go on their high school transcript as soon as they finish that 8th grade year. So the summer going into 9th grade. But it's hard to say because so many organizations have different requirements. But I will say right now, just because I had my daughter to sign up for it, the University of Florida Shands Hospital, the volunteering program, they're taking applications. They have to do an orientation. And my daughter's not yet 16. I didn't see an age requirement. We'll find out tomorrow at the orientation. But again, it may depend on what department that they're able to volunteer in, but you have your libraries. What you do want to make sure is in that volunteering that it is an entity that falls in a non-for-profit. So it can't be a for-profit unless they're logging in job hours for employment where they work. So it can be things at their school, churches, community, but it has to fall up under that realm where it's something that they're giving back for the better good. So be very careful sometimes with certain ones because they can get a little picky as far as the counselors and what's acceptable. So I always just say get approval in advance. But to answer your question, the short way is going to depend on the organization for the age.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like we have answered all the questions. If there's any follow-up questions, we'll wait a second for you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Those are all amazing questions. And I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to share my information. Thank you, Mrs. Folston Hayes, for having me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the CEO, career and college coach of PC Virtual Tutor, bringing educational solutions. So I'll put my information up here if you would like to capture it for additional outside supplemental support. I'm a private company, so this is not a part of ACPS. But it has been a pleasure and an honor to give this information. I know it was a lot, so take it in, digest it piece by piece, and start crafting those plans.
Absolutely. Looks like one person has their hand raised. If you want to just type the information or type your question into the Q&A, and we can go ahead and answer that for you. Maybe it's by mistake.
Okay, it happens sometimes. The computer
Yes.
is sensitive.
So what I'll do if she ends up having a question, oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, you're very, very welcome.
Yes.
I'd love to hear that. Okay. Well, I will go ahead and close us out. So
Okay.
thanks again, everyone, for joining us on tonight's Zoom. We appreciate your participation. And each week you're available to connect with us for more informative presentations and discussions. Once again, I am Tina Folston Hayes, the Parent Academy Specialist of Educational and Equity and Outreach for the Alachua County Public School Systems. Next week, we will actually have Ms. Patrice back to join us to give us some more helpful information. So we would love for you all to join us. As you can see, she is very thorough in providing us with the information that she brings. So we look forward to seeing you all and her next Thursday. So if you have any questions for myself or for Ms. Patrice, please feel free to reach out to the email addresses that was provided to you, or you can give me a call and I will make sure that information is sent over to you. And I'm going to check this Q&A one more time just to make sure before we say good night that I haven't missed anything. We're all set.
Okay.
So you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.